The night was thick with silence, an eerie stillness that hung in the air like fog refusing to lift. In a small, weathered apartment on the edge of the city, Ava sat hunched over her window, watching the streetlights flicker below. Her eyes were vacant, lips slightly parted, and fingers trembling as they clutched the edge of her blanket. Everything in her life had been slipping: job, friends, love. Even her will to keep going. Her world had become a broken mirror, reflecting only the pieces of who she used to be. The walls whispered with memories she wanted to forget. Laughter that once filled the room now echoed as haunting mockery. Bills lay unopened on the table, messages unread on her phone, and in the corner sat a cold plate of food she couldn't bring herself to touch. She felt like a ghost inside her own skin. Her mind swirled with questions. Why me? Why this pain? When does it end? And then it happened. A sudden chill ran through the room. Not from the wind, not from the broken heater, but from something different. Ava shivered, pulling the blanket tighter around her. The air had shifted. The silence deepened, becoming almost sentient. Her heart raced, sensing something intangible. It was then that her eyes caught it. Etched in fog on the glass of her window were 6 words: "Give me your worry and sadness." Her breath hitched. She blinked, leaned closer. The words were real, written as if someone had breathed them out from the other side. But no one had. She lived alone. There was no way anyone could have written that from outside. The window was sealed shut, 3rd floor, no balcony. Ava recoiled, her heartbeat pounding. Was she losing her mind? The room remained still, and yet the message remained clear. Her rational mind fought to explain it, but somewhere deep inside, she felt something stir. Something that had long been buried under the weight of her pain. A whisper of hope. She lay back in bed, eyes locked on the message. "Is this some kind of sign?" she muttered under her breath. "Is someone, something, trying to talk to me?" And that night, for the first time in weeks, she closed her eyes and didn't cry herself to sleep. Instead, she dreamed. It was not a dream like the others, where she'd fall into darkness or hear mocking voices. No, this was different. She stood in a vast, open field bathed in golden light. The grass swayed gently as if moved by breath, not wind. In the distance stood a figure, cloaked in light so blinding she couldn't see their face. But somehow she knew. "You've been carrying too much," the figure said softly. The voice was not male or female. It was neither loud nor whispering. It simply was a voice that filled her heart with a strange calm. "I didn't choose this pain," she replied, her voice cracking. "No," the figure said, "but you chose to carry it alone." Tears welled up in her eyes. "Let me take it," the figure said again. "Your worry, your sadness. Give it to me." Ava shook her head, almost in fear. "If I let go, what will be left of me?" "Peace," the figure whispered. She woke up, gasping. The morning sun poured into her apartment, casting light onto the same window. But the words were gone. The fog had lifted. Still, something inside her had changed. She couldn't explain it, but there was a shift. An invisible hand had touched her soul. That day, she got out of bed without dragging herself. She brushed her hair, even smiled faintly at her reflection. Not because the pain was gone. It wasn't. But because someone or something had made her believe it could be lifted, that she wasn't alone. But the world wasn't done testing her. A few days later, Ava's job application was rejected again. She felt the ache creeping back in, like vines tightening around her chest. That night, the power went out. She sat in the dark, fighting back the tears. The old Ava would have surrendered to it, let the darkness drown her again. But then, something flickered. Not the lights. Her phone was dead. But the window, it shimmered. A subtle glow traced along the edges. She walked over and saw a single word appear on the glass. Trust. She gasped. It was back. "Why me?" she whispered into the night. This time, there was no voice. But her heart heard the answer. "Because I never stopped watching you." That night, she wrote in her journal. Not about pain, but about moments. Moments when she survived, when she kept breathing despite the weight. She wrote about the small signs, the warmth and the light, the stranger who smiled at her in the market, the dream. The days that followed weren't magical. They were hard, but they were different. Ava began to notice things. Birds gathering outside her window every morning, the way the wind would rustle her curtains at just the right moment. She began praying again, not out of obligation, but out of desperation wrapped in hope. Then one day, it happened again. She was walking home from the grocery store, heavy bag in hand, when rain began to pour. She cursed under her breath, frustrated at the timing, soaked within seconds. As she ducked into a nearby alley for shelter, she saw something odd, a poster on the brick wall. Weathered, torn, but the words were still visible. You are not forgotten. I am with you. Just give me your worry and your sadness. She stared at it, heart pounding. How is this happening? Suddenly, from the far side of the alley, a voice called out, "You okay, miss?" An older man stood there, holding an umbrella. "Come," he said, "you'll catch your death standing in the rain." She followed him cautiously. He offered her shelter until the rain stopped. He didn't ask questions, didn't pry, just shared his umbrella and hummed a gentle tune. Before they parted ways, he looked at her and smiled. "You know," he said, "sometimes we don't realize God is answering us because the answer doesn't look like what we expect. Sometimes it's a stranger. Sometimes it's a storm. But he hears you. I think you already know that." Ava's lips trembled. "I think I do." That night, the window remained blank, but her soul didn't feel empty. She no longer waited for a message because she had finally heard it. But peace doesn't arrive in full all at once. It comes in layers, in trials, in unexpected places. Ava would soon discover that her journey had just begun, that what was calling her wasn't only trying to heal her, but asking something deeper. Would she be willing to surrender what she clung to for so long? Her suffering, her sadness, her story of pain? Because healing doesn't mean forgetting. It means transforming, letting go of the identity built on scars, and discovering what lies beneath. And one final time, the window called out, "The sadness made you strong, but it's not who you are. Give it to me." Ava stood before the glass, trembling. She pressed her hand to the window, closed her eyes, and whispered, "I give it to you." And just like that, something shifted in the air. But little did Ava know, the real test was still ahead. The shadows that once lived inside her weren't ready to let go. They would rise again, not to break her this time, but to be confronted. Because when God says, "Give me your worry and sadness," he also says, "Now watch what I do with it." The nights that followed were quieter. Not because Ava's life had become easy, but because her heart had started to trust. She felt watched over, not in a paranoid way, but in the most comforting sense. Like someone had finally wrapped her in arms that couldn't be seen, but were always there. Still, something told her it wasn't over. There was more she had to face. Healing, after all, wasn't just about letting go. It was about stepping into something greater than the pain ever allowed her to imagine. One cold evening, just as the sky bruised itself into twilight, Ava sat journaling by her window. She wrote words she never thought she could again. "I am not alone. I am healing. I am his." As she laid her pen down, a faint knock echoed through her apartment. Not on the door, but on the window. Heart skipping, she turned slowly. No one. But there, traced gently in condensation, were new words. "Are you ready to step forward?" Ava's breath caught. Step forward? Toward what? She knew instinctively this wasn't about a career or a relationship. This was something deeper, something spiritual, an invitation into purpose. Suddenly, the room turned still again, that divine stillness, the type that makes your soul go quiet just to listen. In her heart, a whisper stirred. There are others like you, lost, hurting, waiting for a sign, just like you once were. It hit her like a wave. Maybe her suffering wasn't wasted. Maybe it had carved space in her to feel others' pain, to reach them, not because she was perfect now, but because she understood deeply. Later that week, Ava began volunteering at a local shelter. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't easy, but it was honest. Every person she met carried invisible wounds. And each time she looked into their eyes, she remembered the window, the messages, the nights she thought she wouldn't survive. One night, a woman named Liana stumbled into the shelter, hair matted, eyes vacant. She barely spoke, only stared out the window, just like Ava used to. Something in her felt familiar. Ava brought her a blanket, some food, but the woman wouldn't speak until Ava whispered, "You don't have to carry it anymore. Someone told me, give me your worry and sadness. That saved my life." Liana's eyes slowly turned to her, moistening, and for the first time in days, she spoke. "Someone told me that once, too, but I didn't believe them." Ava smiled softly. "Then maybe you're here to hear it again. And this time, maybe you're ready." It was then that Ava realized she had become the message. The signs that once saved her were now moving through her to others. She wasn't waiting for the window to speak anymore. She was the window God had written on her heart, and now he was using her life to write into the hearts of others. But darkness doesn't vanish so easily. It lingers, hoping for an invitation back in. One evening, after leaving the shelter, Ava received a call. Her mother, estranged for years, had been hospitalized after an overdose. The news hit her like glass shattering across her chest. Their past was soaked in trauma, betrayal, abandonment. Ava had barely survived emotional neglect. She stood frozen on the sidewalk, her hands trembling as the phone slipped from her grip. That old, familiar weight came crawling back, whispering lies. "You haven't changed. Nothing is really different. You're still the broken girl." The city lights blurred with tears. Ava felt her knees weaken. But then, from a passing bus, she caught a glimpse of a large ad pasted across the side. She couldn't see the whole thing, but 3 words were large enough to read. "Don't go back." Her heart seized. Her soul screamed. Not again. Not this time. She closed her eyes and whispered shakily, "God, I give this to you. The fear, the pain, even the past. Take it. I'm done carrying what was never mine to hold." That night at the hospital, Ava sat beside her unconscious mother. Machines beeped. The air smelled sterile and heavy. Her fingers hovered above her mother's hand for a long time before she finally took it. For the first time in years, she didn't feel anger. She felt compassion, not because her mother had changed, but because she had. And as the tears rolled silently down her cheeks, Ava whispered, "I forgive you. I forgive me. And I give it all to him." The weight lifted. It didn't disappear, but it became lighter, manageable, like someone was helping her carry it now. That night in her apartment, she walked to the window out of habit. But this time, there were no words, only her reflection. And behind her reflection, for a split second, she saw it, the glowing outline of a figure standing behind her, just like in her dream. She turned. No one was there, but her heart knew. He never left. From then on, Ava began to write down every message she remembered, every whisper she had heard in her lowest moments. She turned them into pages, and the pages became a book. Messages from the Window. She called it. It wasn't a bestseller. It didn't go viral. But it found its way to people who needed it. People like Liana. People like her. A young boy once approached her after reading and said, "I saw the words on my mirror too, but no one believed me. Now I know I'm not crazy." Ava knelt down, looked him in the eye, and said, "You're not crazy. You're chosen." She realized then that the greatest miracles are not the ones where light parts the sky. Sometimes the miracle is a breath taken in the dark, a whisper heard in pain, a person saved quietly by a message no one else saw. Years passed. The window still stood in her apartment. She never painted over it, never moved. She kept it as a monument to the night everything changed. One morning, years later, as she prepared to leave for another speaking event, she paused by the glass one last time. It was clear. No fog, no message, just sunlight pouring through. And as she stepped away, she smiled, because now the message lived in her. Ava's story is not just her own. It is for every soul who's ever knelt in despair, begging the heavens for a sign. For those who wake up each day dragging the weight of yesterday, believing they're alone. But listen, if you're reading this or hearing this, let these words reach you. You are not alone. You were never forgotten. You were never too broken. God has been waiting, whispering through every quiet moment, through every heartbreak, through every tear. And he says to you now, as he once said to Ava, "Give me your worry and your sadness. I will hold it, I will carry it, and I will transform it into something beautiful." All he asks is that you trust him with it. Let go and watch what happens.